Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. Thank you so much for dropping by. And thank you so much for coming to two things, really. It's to help me a lot because sharing these teachings really helps me a lot. And I am utterly convinced that, I don't want to try and hook anyone in to feeling dependent on these meetings or coming to these meetings or like they should come to these meetings. And what I do want to say is I am utterly and completely convinced. Well, I have my moments but my deepest truth is that this taking in this energy and living the actual teachings of Christ is the way for each one of us to find freedom and for each and for us as a human race to usher in paradise on earth. So thank you so much for coming to these gatherings. It supports me in my growth. It supports me in learning how to do this thing I'm doing. And I'm utterly convinced that this work of taking in this energy, I'll just call it the work of each one of us taking in the divine healing energy, the energy of God, and then living the teachings of Christ is what this world needs now, above all else, above all else. And so I've tried my best to say, I don't want to create dependence on groups. I think that's the exact opposite thing that Christ taught. And in so much as these groups support me and support each one of you taking in the energy of God and then living the teachings of Christ, thank you for coming and doing that, because that is what, just in the depths of my being, that Bruno Groening was convinced of, the most Christ-like being I've ever heard of, the greatest Christian who ever lived, in my view. Just, he lived the teachings of Christ so much more even than the apostles, even than Paul, who are, in the general Christian view is that Paul and the apostles were the greatest Christians, the greatest followers of Christ. Well, I absolutely disagree. Bruno Groening was the greatest follower of Christ. He lived and embodied the message like nobody else. And to anyone who's new to this channel, to give you an example, while he was, Bruno Groening was active in Germany in post-World War II, and literally tens of thousands of people experienced spontaneous healings in his presence. Terminal cases of cancer, just if you think of an illness, it was healed spontaneously. And Bruno Groening never said he was doing the healing. He always said it was God. So, to anyone who's new, a very warm welcome. To some familiar names that are showing up, a very warm welcome. And let's take in this divine, healing life energy that it's written Christ called the waters of life. There's many ways to translate the Greek, and I am actually going to research that. I want to research that today. With the Greek, but it's often translated into English as the living waters or the waters of life. So let's take that in. Let's take in what Bruno Groening called it, the Heilstrom in German, which could be translated as the divine stream, the healing stream, the salvation stream. He also once called it the living waters. So it's very easy to do. Please sit with your legs uncrossed, feet flat on the floor, hands on your legs, palms facing upwards, back in an upright position, neither neither stiff but not slouched over either. If preferably just a nice sort of erect spine, but also a relaxed spine. And then please close your eyes and now hand over to your understanding of a higher power, whether that be God or a spiritual helper you trust, a pure spiritual being, such as Jesus Christ, such as Bruno Groening. Hand over your worries, and I'm doing this right along with you, handing over our worries. If we are aware of any place in our body that doesn't feel good, handing that over and really separating ourselves from the idea of illness. Handing over any resentments and judgments we have of people. And now focusing our attention on our healing. That this energy can heal. That for God, nothing is impossible. And having given away illness and taken on healing, please begin, ask to receive that healing energy. And then observe your body, noticing what you feel. Trusting now that every sensation is a step towards your recovery. If any thoughts of illness come, firmly give them away. Having the intention to take in this good energy. Noticing what you feel. Having the intention to absorb this energy. Hmm. So to anyone who's new, I invite you to please continue to do this practice. I'm going to talk and read a little bit. So we're in a very interesting time on this earth. It's April 2020. And really, from my perspective, we've been given a wake-up call. Many individuals, many organizations, many sort of philosophers of different kinds, scholars, academics, has said that our way of life on this earth as a race is not sustainable. Not only is it not healthy, it's not sustainable. And here we are. Um, and now the whole world has some evidence about that. They might not say it that way. They might not say that people around the world might not agree that things aren't sustainable. In fact, probably most people wouldn't use that exact word. But what everyone here on this planet, I think, can agree upon is that something is very wrong. Something is very, very wrong. And so from there, people can go to all sorts of different explanations as to what that thing that's wrong is. Well, the teachings of Christ really make it really simple what the problem is. Because, right, so, all the different explanations, some people will say, well, it's, political. Some people will say, well, people aren't moral enough. Some people will say, um, you know, um, some people will say overpopulation. Some people will say, well, it's because not enough people are following the right religion. There's all these explanations, and there's probably some truth to all of them. That's, or at least that's. But is are any? Well, let me rephrase that. So all of those things I just named are certainly contributing to disharmony on the planet. But are any one of them the problem? Because that's the thing. To solve a problem, you have to understand the problem, or you have to know what the problem is. To use, again, a medical analogy, for a doctor to provide treatment, there has to be an accurate diagnosis. I'm just trying to think of a diagnosis for the world problem I've heard recently. Okay, so yeah, one of them. No, that one doesn't really work. Okay, no analogies coming. So, to address what's happening right now in the world, we have to know what's causing it. Yes, there are doctors and scientists who are, and politicians even, who are coming up with sort of trying to manage the symptoms. But according to the teachings of Christ, and as made very, very clear by Bruno Groening, that's not going to actually solve the problem. That all the things we think of as the problem are really just the waves on top of the ocean being evil. Now, Bruno Groening never used the word evil, neither did Jesus, because neither one of them spoke English. So, to really get at what they actually meant, it is helpful to look at the language. We don't even really have the language that Jesus, we don't have, the Bible's written in Greek, and we don't know if Jesus spoke Greek or not, but regardless, he does speak of evil. But bringing it back to Bruno Groening, who just clarified Christ's teachings, just made it so clear. Bruno used the word bosse, evil, viciousness, nastiness. And he said, in essence, that the devil is real. And if you can't believe that, don't worry about it. And he also said that, he not only said that the devil is real, but that evil is real. And that, and if you can't believe that, don't worry about it. I couldn't in the beginning, but through reflecting on my own behavior, through reflecting on other people's behavior, I really came to see that while the word, I haven't verified in my own direct experience that the devil exists, but I have verified in my own direct experience through observing myself, also through observing other people, but primarily through observing myself, that there is a force that wants to destroy me. And not just me, but everyone and everything. So that's a very bold claim, but it's a very important claim, because if Jesus Christ was correct, I'm convinced he is, and if Bruno Groening was correct and accurately conveying Jesus' message, which I'm convinced he is, then what they're both saying is you're not going to solve the problem until you understand the problem. And part of the problem is most people don't even believe in evil anymore. In spiritual circles, you hear people talk about ego without a full understanding of how nasty and vicious the ego is. Now, I'm not concerned as sharing this work. To me, it's not a big deal if you don't like the word evil. I didn't at first, and now it really resonates, because what I've come to understand is there is a force, maybe a being. I don't know. I haven't met the being face to face yet. But there is definitely a force that is seeking to destroy me. And I'm not paranoid, because I see that it's seeking to destroy everyone, and it's seeking to destroy life on this earth. But the way to really come to know evil is to reflect on yourself. Not because you're evil, but because you can reflect on your behavior, become aware of your thoughts, and if you really engage in introspection, what I found through engaging in introspection is that their thoughts come my way that lead me down a dark path. They start off small, and then they just accelerate and take me down a very dark path. For example, let's say it's time to go to bed. And I've used this example before, but it really brings it home. So it's time to go to bed, and then you have the thought, oh, I'm going to check Facebook. Like, I'm expecting a message from Marcus. I'll just see if he responded. And so you hop on Facebook, and then the first thing you see is like a cat video from a friend, and you watch the cat video, and the next thing you know, Marcus didn't respond, but someone else posted something that you didn't like. So you post a response, and you start an argument, and then you get all stressed, and you close the computer, and you go lie in bed, and you can't fall asleep. So, and then you wake up the next day, and you're grumpy because you didn't get enough sleep, and then things don't go well during your day, and then and then maybe that's it. Maybe at the end of that day, you sort of recuperate and everything is fine until the next time you do it. But over time, it wears on us. And so the question is, where did that thought come from? Oh, I'll just go take a peek at Facebook. Generally, people will say it's a bad habit. Well, Bruno Groening would agree with that, but he would not stop there. Bruno Groening would also say, and all bad habits stem from evil, from taking in evil thoughts and saying yes to them, and then over time, you just become controlled by them. A Christian theologian wrote, evil's greatest victory was convincing people that evil doesn't exist. If you read the written record of what we have of the teachings of Christ, he spoke quite a bit about evil. And yet in modern Christianity, not all, but there's quite a large segment of modern Christians who just say, oh, that's just a metaphor, or, oh, he didn't really mean that. Well, I think he did. And, regardless, because, those texts were written so long ago, and regardless, we have Bruno Groening who clarified what Christ taught. And Bruno Groening used the exact same concepts. He maybe didn't use the exact same word. We don't know the exact word that Christ used about speaking about evil or speaking about the devil. But if you really reflect on it, what you can see is the spirit of what Bruno Groening taught, exact same on this very topic, that there is a power that we must rise above. But to rise above it, we have to be aware of its existence. And, you know, I've said this many times. Sometimes I feel like I talk too much about evil. Sometimes I think I don't talk enough about it. So it's constantly finding that middle line between not being fearful of evil, not sort of invoking it in any, some people are afraid to even say the word evil or say the phrase the devil because they think it invokes it. Like, even as I just said that, I felt a little twinge of fear. And so that means I still have some healing and learning to do on this topic as well. So it's not that we need to dwell on, and we certainly don't want to take in evil and negativity, but finding that balance point. Bruno Groening called us to vigilance. He said evil will constantly attack and try and pull a person off the good path. And each of us can verify this in our own experience. Observe your thoughts for 10 minutes. And if you don't have any negative thoughts during that, like, write down every thought for 10 minutes. If you don't have any negative thoughts, then do it for a half hour. If you don't have any negative thoughts, then do it for an hour and do it all day. If you don't have any negative thoughts all day, please start a YouTube channel and I'll come and learn from you. Because I've done a lot of spiritual work on myself and on and off all day long. Sometimes it's slightly destructive, sometimes very destructive. Negative thoughts come my way. And if I'm not full of divine energy, and if I'm not being very mindful, then those thoughts, we have this habit of just saying yes to our thoughts. And that's, I believe, why Bruno Groening called us to fight, spoke of the spiritual path as a battle. Because it is. Our soul can't be destroyed or killed, in my understanding of what Bruno taught and what Christ taught. But it certainly can be led on a very unfun road. So please, if nothing else, as we take in this divine energy, please observe your thoughts for a few minutes and just thought by thought, is this a good thought? Is this not a good thought? Observing the body, observing your thoughts, taking in this energy. There's a very sweet song that goes, "What the world needs now is love, sweet love." And I would agree with that. And for that love to flow, I am utterly convinced that while there are many things that are helpful, there's only one thing that's going to defeat the block to love, evil, and that's individuals living the teachings of Christ. So, my intention is to empower people to do that. Because I think that's, can any one of us in this lifetime get to the place where we can work the same works that Bruno Groening and Jesus did? I don't know. It's written that Jesus said that we will do even greater things. These things and greater will you do. It's written, he said. And Bruno Groening, in essence, said, "You are what I am." And so it's a question I struggle with often. And maybe I'll make a whole video on it. But what I do know, and I'm utterly convinced of, is that each one of us can grow towards being more like Bruno, more like Jesus, a literal instrument of God, a literal servant of God. That much I know to be true. And I'm utterly convinced that us um, doing that, becoming that, as I shared when speaking about this, Bruno Groening said that we have a mandatory, obligatory duty to get connected to God and stay connected to God. And he used this other very poetic German word, which is seldom used, Schuldigkeit. It's um, it's almost like a poetic proverbial word that no one would ever use in day-to-day conversation. And it's I've had it described as, you know, giving your whole where your light, how you live is like your purpose, like your function, like a horse. A horse that takes people. It doesn't just do something. It's like it is what it does. Giving its, giving our whole life to a mission and task to where our how we're what we're doing is what our whole life is devoted to. These are some of the meanings of the word. It's a very profound word. And Bruno Groening said, you have, after all, the mandatory, obligatory duty and Schuldigkeit, this full vocational calling to immediately establish. Actually, it's not really establish. It's to immediately take in the divine connection, and then to live by that. To it, he would also say, take up the divine connection and maintain it. So as I've shared many times, I'm no master, I'm no guru, I'm just conveying the message, sharing my experience with living it, and seeking to do it every day, seeking to do it every moment, and falling short every day. And Bruno Groening said, if you want to have the divine experience, you must strive after it. The German word streben, strive, aspire, has a little bit of a connotation of struggle. Endeavor, I think, might be an English word. We really have to give ourselves to it. And that's what I'm convinced the world needs now. And it doesn't mean every person's going to have a YouTube channel or even preach or share these ideas, but what we need is living them. And because I love sitting here talking about it. Like there's a part of me that just wants to do this all day long, and maybe I'll just do more of it because I love it. It brings me joy. And of course, that's not the path isn't me talking about it and us having gatherings and get together. That can be a small part of the path, but it's the living it. It's the living it. And Bruno Groening even spoke of this. He said, practice. I have to look at the German, but practice is what I forget the exact quote, but just in essence, what people need to do is practice this. And people would say to him, Bruno, you just keep, in essence, Mr. Groening, you keep saying the same thing over and over. And he said, they're like, you're repeating yourself. And he said, well, I'll stop repeating myself once people start living it. So friends, let's live it. Let's strive every day strive to grow towards this. Because and grow is a bit of a misnomer because it's what we are. Bruno said we are an instrument of God and a servant of God. We just don't believe. We're just not doing it. We've forgotten, he said. So let's do a little cleanup every day to remove everything that interferes with being what we are. And I think maybe that's the meaning of Schuldigkeit, where your inner essence is just so aligned with what you're doing that what you're doing is just an expression of who you are. So let's sit for a little bit and really reflect on all this. Continue to take in this good energy. So I'm going to close this with a prayer. Beloved Maker, God, Bruno Groening spoke of you as our Heavenly Father that's all around us and both in us. Please help us to give away all our false ideas about you and come to know the truth of you. And to know it in a very direct way that goes beyond the mind, of a true knowing. Beloved Christ, our dear friend Bruno, please help us to understand this thing that both of you called evil. Please help us to understand and to know, to in our own experience, to know the truth about this thing and how to, Bruno, you gave such clear teachings how to oppose this and that our need for vigilance. Please help us to take it seriously. Bruno, you once said, don't play with evil. Forgetting the exact word. I think it was don't play with evil, meaning not taking evil seriously. Please help us to take it seriously. to have the correct perspective about it, to not be afraid of it, but not to dismiss it either. Please help us to really be humble, to recognize our need for the divine, and our need for nature. And please help us to reach for faith, to be vigilant with our thoughts, and every thought that doesn't feel right, every thought that is a denial of faith, every thought that is somehow a denial of God and God's omnipotence, every thought that the good will prevail. Please help us to be vigilant for it and to firmly say no to it and hand it over and ask for a true good thought. These things we ask. Please, Bruno, help us with them. Please, beloved Maker, help us to live by these principles. And please, please, help us to be guided. For those of us who are open to such things, please help us, God, help us to be guided by your Son. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So grateful to all of you. Thanks for saying hello, forever loving everything. Hi, Alex. Hey, Magdalena. Hello, Germana. Thanks for joining in, Jisoo, and thank you, Magdalena. I hope my words are wise, and pas de quoi, mon ami Alex. Merci pour une journée. Thank you so much, Magdalena. It's all of you receiving these words. I'm starting to really find my strength and really find my conviction in these teachings. So you're welcome, and thank you for helping me. Merci à tous. Thank you to all. Take care. Beaucoup d'amour. Much love.